Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. I liked the way her red dress lay crumpled on the bedroom floor, like a quiet accusation I wasn't ready to hear. It was late afternoon, not quite evening, and the sun that slipped through the blinds cut the room into stripes of light and shadow. The dress looked soft, almost helpless in the golden light, yet it was the single harshest thing I'd seen in weeks. I stood there, swallowing the dryness in my throat, letting my gaze wander over every fold of fabric. I remember thinking how ironic it was that something so alluring could feel so cold. Even then, I knew the house was about to become a tomb for all the trust I'd had in her. The rest of the room was still, too still. But that dress, it was screaming. I didn't move closer. I just stared, my heartbeat heavy, my mind beginning its slow unraveling. I can't say for sure how long I stood there, but eventually my knees locked, and I had to shift my weight. The silence felt alive. I thought about the last time she wore that dress, some dinner downtown, or maybe it was at that art gallery fundraiser. I remembered how I couldn't take my eyes off her, how it clung to her shape, how proud I was that this woman was with me. Now, it was as if all those memories were mocking me from the floor, forcing me to realize that what I admired might have never been mine at all. It's an odd thing to suddenly doubt the past. Every kiss, every whisper, every promise. Did she mean any of it? My fingers twitched at my side. I wanted to pick up the dress, fling it into a corner, do something to break the moment. But I didn't. Instead, I left it there, like evidence at a crime scene. The bed was made, neat as ever, our pillows set side by side. My pillow, her pillow. Somehow, that small domestic arrangement filled me with a sadness I couldn't describe. I found myself recalling how she'd place a lavender sachet between those pillows, claiming it helped her sleep. But had she truly slept peacefully while lying about yoga classes and day trips to God knows where? I made my way down the hall to the living room. Candles flickered in the bathroom across from me, my new habit for the last few weeks. The guys at work would probably laugh if they knew. But I needed light, something warm, even if it was just a few candles in the smallest room of the house. I hated the feeling of drifting like a ghost in what was supposed to be my sanctuary. The living room was neat, too neat, as though it had staged itself in my absence. The pictures that once filled the walls, I'd taken them down a few days back. I stuffed them in an old footlocker in the garage. Couldn't bear to see them. Couldn't bring myself to destroy them either. Not yet. The corners of the room still bore dusty outlines where the frames used to hang. I remember thinking, if you strip a place of its photos, it turns hollow, like a vacant set. No life, no story, just furniture. The couch, the coffee table, the lamp. And somewhere, if you were quiet, you could hear the echo of laughter that no longer belonged. I could feel the memory of her laughter, see her sinking into that couch with a glass of wine, her eyes shining with a spark that used to make me proud. Now that spark was for someone else. I stepped outside onto the porch. It was chilly. An Oregon autumn. The first sharp smell of burning leaves hung in the air. And it reminded me of the forest I'd read about on the GPS logs. The place she visited with him, the place that told me, more clearly than any argument, that she had no business practicing yoga on a muddy trail. She hated pine, for crying out loud. Allergic to it. Yet the GPS had tracked the car to a remote clearing, 40 miles out, on a random Tuesday. Middle of nowhere. Not alone. I gripped the porch railing, letting the cold bite into my palms. Slow, measured breaths. In the Marines, they taught us to keep steady when everything else is going to hell. Observe, wait, strike when you have the shot. It's been years since I wore the uniform, but some things never leave your bones. I closed my eyes and thought back to that day I discovered the GPS reading. I'd come home from a job site early, exhausted, wanting a warm meal and the comfort of a routine. Instead, I got the kind of routine you can't stomach. Her phone was lying on the kitchen counter, unlocked. She never used to leave it like that. Something in my gut told me to check. And there it was, 40 miles out, a forest location pinned. The next message read, "That was amazing. Next Tuesday." I didn't confront her right away. I tried. God, I tried to just ask, get it out in the open. But the words died in my throat. Maybe part of me wanted to pretend a little longer, to hope there was some innocent explanation. Then I found the receipts, 2 cups of coffee, midday, multiple times a week at that downtown cafe. The barista's name, Michael, popped up in her messages. And Linda, my wife, asking him to read her something he'd written. Poetry. She used to say she never understood poetry, that it was too flowery. But apparently, she'd found a poet who spoke to her heart in a way I could not. When I finally confronted her, my voice barely above a whisper, she lied. Told me she was exploring new yoga classes, maybe trying something in nature. It's peaceful, she said. I need peace of mind. Peace, sure. As if that explained the coffee receipts, as if that explained why she'd rush to the shower when she got home, or why she'd slip into that red dress on nights she said she was meeting an old friend from college. And all I did was nod, forcing a polite smile, letting her walk away. I hated myself for that. Hated that my silence gave her the chance to keep lying. I stayed on the porch until the sun dipped behind the neighbor's roof. The temperature dropped quickly, and I heard the familiar hum of the heater kicking on inside. It was getting late. I'd promised a buddy I'd drop by the bar after finishing some accounts, but I couldn't face anyone tonight. I turned back inside, locking the door behind me. The house seemed darker, longer, as though every hallway had stretched. I noticed my reflection in the hallway mirror. Stoic face, a streak of gray at the temples. Eyes that looked older than 42. I rarely recognize myself these days. I walked past our son's room, the boy I'd called my own for 9 years. An ache slammed into my chest. The DNA test results had arrived just days earlier, confirming what I'd been dreading. He wasn't mine. Not biologically. Linda had tears in her eyes when she confessed. She didn't reveal the father's identity right away, but in my gut, I knew it was this same Michael. The timeline fit too perfectly. I'd married Linda a few months after returning from a long stint overseas. She was pregnant soon after, or so I believed. Now that memory was stained. In the hallway, I noticed a small scratch on the wall, about knee-high. Our boy had made that mark with his scooter a few years back. He'd looked so apologetic. I told him not to worry, that walls can be painted, mistakes can be fixed. But not this time. It's funny how the little details in a house can remind you of heartbreak. I ran my hand over that scratch, feeling the uneven surface. A father's pride had lived in every corner of this place. Now it felt like a set of illusions meticulously arranged by a woman I barely knew. I carried a fresh candle into the bathroom, letting the flame dance against the mirror. I watched my own reflection in the flickering light, noticing lines around my mouth that grief had carved. The old me would have punched a hole in the wall, or maybe marched up to the man and let fists speak. But I had changed since the course. I learned to breathe, to keep everything locked behind a door in my head. Doesn't mean the anger vanished. It just took new forms. Sometimes it emerged in my unwillingness to speak. Sometimes it came in the middle of the night when I'd wake up, fists clenched, heart pounding. She was out tonight. Doing what? I stopped trying to guess. I sank onto the closed toilet lid, leaning forward with elbows on my knees. My mind drifted to that first moment I actually saw them together, ironically at that same cafe. I was grabbing coffee to go, on my way to a client meeting, when I noticed Linda in a corner seat. She wasn't alone. He was tall, younger, hair a bit messy, leaning forward, reading something aloud. Her face glowed, like she was seeing everything she ever wanted right there in front of her. I stood behind a large potted plant, out of view, listening to the way her laughter rang out. God, how long had it been since she laughed that freely with me? I confronted her after that, but not directly. I just asked why she looked so happy when she got her coffee. She shrugged, said she'd met a creative barista who introduced her to new blends. "He's kind of artistic," she'd said. "Helps me see life from a fresh angle." She still insisted it was harmless, but the cracks in her voice told me everything. I let it go again, because the alternative was a blowout. I didn't want to unravel us. I didn't want to discover how deep the betrayal ran. But we can't hide from truth forever, can we? I left the bathroom and trudged into the kitchen, flicking on the light. Everything was in order. Linda was meticulous about counters, floors, dishes. I opened the fridge, half hoping I'd find something she'd left for me. Nothing but the usual groceries. No note. No sign of dinner. Normally, this would be the part where I'd swallow my anger and pick up takeout. But my stomach churned. I settled for black coffee instead, ignoring the late hour. Drinking coffee felt like a petty act of rebellion, especially now that I associated it with her secret fling. The phone rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a jarring sound in that quiet house. I picked it up, saw my dad's number. I hesitated. He was in a retirement community in Florida. He never called this late unless something was wrong. I cleared my throat. "Hey, Dad. Jim. Everything all right?" His voice cracked, older, more fragile than I remembered. I forced calm into my words. "Sure, Dad. Why wouldn't it be?" He sighed. "I just had a feeling. You know how I get these days. How's Linda? The boy?" I closed my eyes, biting back the bitterness. "They're fine." It was a coward's lie, but I wasn't ready to drop the truth on him. Certainly not over the phone. Not like this. "We'll come visit soon," I lied again. He talked about the mundane, the weather, a new bingo night, and I responded with half-hearted hums. Eventually he let me go, telling me to take care of that family. My throat went tight. If only he knew. I promised I would, then hung up. I stood there, the phone in hand, feeling 1,000 years old. Time crept by, and the house grew even quieter, as though it were pulling away from me. Around midnight, I heard the door open. Linda walked in, hair slightly disheveled, eyes carrying the guilt I'd grown accustomed to. She froze when she saw me. We stared at each other, the distance so vast it felt like we were continents apart. "You're still up," she said softly. I nodded, swirling the coffee in my mug. I noticed her looking at the blank walls, where photographs once hung. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, everything we'd built. Now, gone. She swallowed. "Where did you put them?" "Locked away," I said. "Don't ask me why. Just seemed right." A flicker of pain crossed her face. She shuffled, taking off her coat. Beneath it, she wore a simple black blouse and jeans, nothing fancy. Yet I remembered that red dress, still on the floor of our bedroom, waiting like a silent witness. "I didn't realize you took them down." I let silence answer. She set her coat aside, massaging her temples. "Look, Jim, I know you're upset, but can we talk?" I studied her for a long moment, the overhead light casting hard lines on her cheekbones. "Talk about what exactly?" She blinked, tears threatening to pool but not quite forming. "About us. About him. About where we go from here." I stood from the table, my chair scraping the linoleum. "I'm not interested in hearing more lies, Linda." She opened her mouth, closed it. "All right," she whispered. "But there are things I need to say. Things about us that—" I slammed my mug onto the counter, not enough to shatter it, but enough to jolt her. My voice came out low, broken. "I gave you everything I had. I built this house with my own hands. I worked so you could do your freelancing, so you could chase your interior design dreams. I believed in you, in our son. Do you know what it's like to find out he's not mine?" Her eyes fell to the floor, tears now glistening. "I never meant to hurt you." "Too late," I growled. "Did you think your secrets would stay secrets forever?" The forest trips, the texting at 3 a.m., the coffee breaks that lasted hours, the damn DNA test that wrote it in black and white. All this time, I gave you room to come clean, and you just fed me more delusions. I saw her lip tremble. Jim, I was afraid. I was young back then, confused, and with you gone so often. I held up a hand. Don't you dare blame my job. I did what I had to for us. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know. I'm sorry. But it started before we got married. It's complicated. Complicated, I echoed, letting the word hang. A nice way of saying you did what you wanted and hoped I'd never find out. She inhaled sharply. I didn't plan for it. Michael was just. We connected. He made me feel alive. And you were so distant, always working, always on edge after your deployment. She swallowed. I was weak. I stared at her, feeling a numbness creeping in. She was giving me excuses, trying to paint her betrayal in shades of gray. But all I saw was black. You took our life, our marriage, and you shredded it. And now you expect me to talk it out. She shrugged helplessly, tears still rolling. What else can we do? I closed my eyes, exhaling. I don't know, I said, voice hollow. But I can't look at you the same way. And as for him, my hands clenched into fists. I ever see that barista near my house again, I stopped myself, the Marine discipline kicking in. You know what? Maybe I'll do nothing. Maybe I'll just walk away. She sobbed, covering her mouth. I never wanted it to be like this. Funny, I said, turning away. Neither did I. She retreated to the bedroom, and I heard the door shut softly. I didn't follow. Instead, I sank back into the kitchen chair and stared at the table until my vision blurred. Anger hammered at my chest, but it had nowhere to go. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I dozed off right there, head resting on folded arms, like a soldier too worn out to make it back to the bunk. When I woke, it was dawn. Pale light filtered through the window, and I felt a stiffness in my neck. Linda was gone, her car missing from the driveway. Typical. She ran, maybe to clear her head, or to see him. She no longer bothered with excuses. I dragged myself to the bedroom, expecting to see the dress still on the floor, but it was gone, replaced by emptiness that made my chest ache. She tidied up, left no trace of the scaring effect it had on me. That made me angrier than I expected. The day passed in a haze. I had a house to build on the outskirts of town, a client with big dreams, and a bigger budget. My men greeted me with nods, not noticing the raw tension in my stance. I dived into work, measuring, cutting, overseeing the foundation. Physical labor was a welcome escape. By the time we wrapped, the sun was low again, painting the sky in bruised oranges and reds. I returned home, half hoping Linda would be there. She was perched on the edge of the couch, fidgeting. When I stepped inside, she stood. Jim, we need to discuss the boy. He's at a friend's for a sleepover. They invited him last minute. My jaw tightened. All right. Fine. She took a careful step forward. But he'll be back tomorrow, and I need to know what you're planning. Are we telling him anything? I swallowed. The boy was innocent in this, yet I could barely look at him without feeling the sting of betrayal. We're not telling him a damn thing. Not yet. He's 9. He deserves to be a kid a while longer. She nodded, tears threatening again. And us. Are we over? I glanced around the house, recalling the day she moved in, how bright her face had been, how she decorated the walls with her own paintings and creative touches. All of it seemed like a life that belonged to another couple. I don't see a way forward, I said softly. Not after this. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then she turned away, shoulders trembling. I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. My heart was too raw, too guarded. That night, I lay awake in bed, hearing her soft sobs through the wall. Memories flickered like a broken movie reel. Our wedding day, the night I thought I conceived my son. The times we laughed in front of the TV. I wondered if she'd been faking it all. If so, she was a hell of an actress. Sometime after midnight, anger took hold again. I rose, quietly tiptoed to the living room, and dug out the cardboard box with our photos. Wedding album, baby pictures, holiday snapshots. I carried it all to the backyard. The moon was hidden behind clouds, leaving just enough faint light to see shapes. I placed the box on the ground, grabbed some lighter fluid from the grill, and doused the contents. Then I lit a match. A small flame took hold, dancing among the photographs. The heat blossomed, and the pictures curled inward, blackening. I watched them burn, one by one, quietly, not a single tear. The smell of burning paper and chemicals filled my nostrils. I felt a stab of regret. These were pieces of my life, but also a grim satisfaction. Let them burn. Let the illusions go. As the flames died down, I kicked sand over the ashes, my breath fogging in the cold night air. Something in me eased, like a valve releasing pent-up pressure. I knew I wasn't finished, that the real confrontation was still coming. But for tonight, I let the emptiness cradle me. I returned inside, stripped off my clothes, and fell into a dreamless sleep on the couch, too tired to face the bed we once shared. Morning arrived, and with it a sense of grim purpose. I cleaned up, dressed in plain jeans and a black t-shirt, ignoring Linda's cautious glances. She was in the kitchen, sipping tea, eyes red from crying. I grabbed the keys. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice trembling. "I need to see him," I said, stepping toward the door. "Michael." She shook her head, panic flaring. "Please, Jim, don't do anything you'll regret." I met her eyes, voice flat. "Regret is all I have left." Without another word, I left. The drive downtown felt surreal. My hands gripped the wheel with a vice-like tension. The closer I got to the cafe, the more my heart thundered. When I parked, I saw his motorcycle out front, a sleek black machine with a custom seat. Rage tightened my throat. I pushed through the door of the cafe, the smell of roasted beans slapping me in the face. A couple of customers stood in line. I spotted him behind the counter, pulling espresso shots with a casual ease. He looked up, saw me, and froze. "Hey," he managed. "Step outside," I said, voice low. His coworker frowned at me, but I didn't care. Michael glanced around, clearly uncomfortable, then nodded. He handed the portafilter to a co-barista and moved out from behind the counter. We walked outside, where the morning sun made me squint, intensifying the tightness in my jaw. I didn't speak until we reached the sidewalk's edge, away from gawking bystanders. Then I turned to him. His face was younger than mine by a good 12 years, but there were lines of worry there too. "You know who I am," I said. He swallowed. "James, listen, I never." I held up a hand. "Shut it. We're not doing the excuses. You slept with my wife. You made a fool of me. And now I find out my son is actually yours." He flinched, guilt smearing his features. "Linda and I." I lunged, my fist colliding with his jaw. A single hard punch. He stumbled back, clutching his face. My knuckles burned, but I stayed steady. "That's for lying," I said quietly, my voice shaking with the fury I bottled up. He didn't swing back. He just stared, eyes watering with shock. "I'm sorry," he gasped. I breathed in, steadying myself. A second punch itched in my bones, but I held it back. "You're sorry." My voice came out hollow. "That's it." He dabbed at a trickle of blood on his lip. "You have every right to be angry. I never meant for it to go this far." I let out a humorless laugh. "It's always the same script, isn't it? I never meant it. But you did it anyway." He nodded, shame tugging at his features. "I love her. Or I thought I did." We connected over writing, over feeling trapped in our own lives. She. I gritted my teeth. Trapped? She had me. A family. A home. You think life's so simple you can just walk into someone else's marriage and fix your boredom with stolen pleasure. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm not trying to justify it. I know I'm the villain here. Linda was hurting. She felt you were gone too much. She wanted to feel alive again. We made a mistake. Mistake, I spat. The boy is 9. That's nearly a decade of lies. That's more than a mistake. That's a whole life. He looked away, tears trembling in his eyes. I wish I could change it. I wish I had the courage to tell you earlier, or not do it at all. But it's done. My hands clenched again. You better stay away from us. From me. From our house. If Linda wants to see you, that's her business, but not under my roof, not in my presence. He pressed his lips together, nodded. Understood. I stared at him a moment longer, remembering how easily he'd turned my world upside down. Then I spun on my heel and walked away. As I did, I realized something. The ache in my chest was just as strong as before. Hitting him didn't give me the release I'd hoped for. The real damage was done, and no amount of revenge would set it right. I got in my truck, knuckles still stinging, and drove home. Linda was sitting at the kitchen table when I entered. She looked up with wide eyes. You saw him, didn't you? I said nothing, cradling my throbbing hand. She noticed my bruised knuckles. Her face fell. Oh, Jim. It's done, I muttered. I told him to stay away. She wiped at her eyes. I'm sorry. For everything. I folded my arms, staring at the empty walls. Maybe you are. But that doesn't fix what you broke. She bowed her head in silence. After a moment, she spoke, voice trembling. The boy will be home soon. Yeah, I said quietly. I'll be in the garage. I spent the afternoon rummaging through old Marine gear, pictures of my platoon, a few medals I'd kept in a trunk. It reminded me of a time I felt sure of who I was. My discipline, my sense of honor. Where had all that gone in this fiasco? I guess it drowned in the swirl of love and routine, illusions I clung to because I wanted them so badly. The truth was, Linda and I had grown distant. She found solace in the arms of a poet, and I, lost in my own illusions, never noticed until it was too late. The boy came home, eyes bright, backpack slung over one shoulder. Dad, he called. The sound of that single word stabbed me in the heart. I forced a smile, reminding myself that no matter what the DNA said, this kid still thought of me as his father. I stepped from the garage, greeted him with a nod. He rattled off about his friend's new puppy, the video games they played. I listened with a lump in my throat, wondering if he'd ever know how much I loved him, how I would have laid down my life for him, how I still might. But also knowing that soon enough, he'd learn the truth. Secrets this big don't stay buried. Linda hovered nearby, eyes red, trying to appear normal for the boy. I avoided her gaze and gently tousled his hair. You hungry? Let's order pizza. He grinned. I could see how my attempt at normalcy eased him. He was just a child. After all. That evening, we ate pizza in silence, the boy chatting about school while Linda and I barely spoke. Once he was asleep, she cornered me in the hallway. We can't keep lying to him forever, she said, voice hushed. I know, I replied. But not yet. Let him have his childhood a bit longer. Her eyes brimmed with tears. If you leave, Jim, if we end this, I don't know how he'll cope. I exhaled, exhaustion making my bones ache. We'll figure something out. But our marriage, my voice broke. I can't see a future for us. She nodded, tears spilling. I wish I could turn back time. I wish. Enough, I said, stepping past her. Wishes are worthless now. I slept on the couch again, staring at the dark ceiling, the weight of what was coming pressing on my chest. Divorce, custody, maybe some arrangement for the boy. These thoughts swirled like vultures around a dying carcass. When morning came, I felt hollow. This was the day, I told myself. I would lay everything out. No more illusions. I drove the boy to school, giving him a gentle pat on the shoulder when he hopped out of the truck. His grin nearly killed me. I watched him run off to his friends, backpack bouncing. Then I drove home, found Linda sitting in the living room, tears drying on her cheeks. She looked as if she'd been awake all night. "Let's talk," she said quietly. I nodded, took a seat across from her. The coffee table between us felt like a chasm. "I'll give you whatever you want," she said, voice trembling. "Alimony, the house, anything. I just don't take him away from me." I stared at her. For a moment, pity rose in my chest, battling the rage. "I'm not cruel," I said slowly. "He needs his mother. And if we do this legally, we'll have to figure out how to handle paternity." She closed her eyes. "Michael's the biological father, but you've been there for him from day one. Maybe the court." I held up a hand. "Let's not turn this into a courtroom fiasco just yet. I need time to think." She nodded. As silence stretched, finally, I spoke the words that had been gnawing at me. "You should leave." Her eyes widened. "Leave?" "Yes," I said, though my voice trembled. "Not forever, but for now. Go to your mother's in Arizona, or wherever. Give me and the boy some time." Tears streamed down her face. She bowed her head. "If that's what you want." "It is," I said. "Pack what you need. By tonight, I want you gone." She sniffed, wiping her cheeks. I understand." She stood on unsteady legs, then paused. "I still love you, Jim. I'm sorry if that means nothing now." I stared at her. My jaw tightened. Love without honesty is worthless. She pressed her lips together, turned, and headed to the bedroom. I heard her softly sobbing as she packed. I made myself a coffee, black, bitter, scorching my tongue. The day crawled by. She filled 2 suitcases, a few boxes, occasionally brushing past me in the hallway. Our eyes would meet, but neither of us had anything left to say. By late afternoon, I helped her carry her luggage to the car. It felt surreal, as if I were assisting a stranger. She stood by the driver's side door, face drawn, and exhaled. "When the boy comes home, tell him I had an emergency with my mom. That I'll call him tonight." I nodded, the weight in my chest heavier than ever. She touched my arm, but I stepped back, and she dropped her hand. A moment later, the car started, and she pulled out of the driveway. I watched her taillights disappear down the street. And just like that, I was alone in a house that no longer felt like home. The boy returned from school with typical excitement, scanning the house for his mother. I gave him the story, plastering on a smile, then ordered takeout again. Over dinner, he asked when she'd be back. I shrugged, said maybe a few days, maybe longer. He frowned but nodded, trusting my words. My heart broke for him. That night, I stepped into the bedroom, flipping on a light. The bed looked enormous without her presence. I noticed the corner of that red dress peeking from the closet. She must have tossed it in there carelessly. I crouched down, grabbed it. The smooth fabric slipped through my fingers. I thought about the day I found it on the floor. The weight of betrayal crashed over me again. Before I knew it, I was ripping it in half, my chest heaving. The fabric tore with a dull, ugly sound, and I tossed it aside, staring at the remains. A strange calm descended on me. It was like I was finally allowing myself to feel something real, something raw. The next days passed in a haze of routine. I'd get the boy ready for school, drop him off, head to the construction site, then pick him up. Linda called him nightly, her voice subdued and teary. He would pass me the phone, and I'd shake my head. I had nothing to say to her, not yet. Sometimes, after the boy slept, I lit candles in the toilet again, and just sat in that small space. It was the only room where everything still felt straightforward. Cold porcelain, flickering light, no lies. A week later, the phone rang in the middle of the day. My sister's voice on the other end. "Dad's in the hospital, Jim. Heart attack. They say he might not make it, I felt my stomach lurch. "I'll book a flight," I said, anxiety twisting in my gut. My father was the one who taught me discipline, who shaped me into the man I thought I was. I needed to see him. That evening, I hurriedly arranged for a neighbor to watch the boy for a few days. I debated telling Linda, but decided I didn't need her help. I flew out to Florida, praying I'd arrive in time. My dad was stable, but weak, in a hospital bed. Tubes ran in and out, monitors beeped softly. When I walked in, he tried a reassuring smile. "Hey, Marine," he said, voice hoarse. I forced a grin. "You gave me a scare, old man." He chuckled, then grimaced at the pain in his chest. We talked quietly. He asked about Linda, the boy, the house. I kept it vague, not wanting to burden him. But he saw through me. "Something's wrong," he rasped. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." I exhaled, lowering my voice. "It's Linda. She cheated. The boy, he isn't mine." He stared, pain in his eyes that had nothing to do with his heart condition. "Oh, Jim, I'm so sorry." I shook my head, fighting off tears. "I feel like my life's a lie. I can't. This isn't something I can fix with a hammer and nails." Dad closed his eyes, inhaling carefully. "Sometimes, you just have to burn it down and start fresh." He forced a small grin. "You taught me how to use a smartphone, right? Maybe I'll find you a new wife online." His attempt at humor made my throat tighten. I scoffed softly, blinking back tears. "Yeah, maybe, old man. Maybe." I stayed with him a few days, watching over him as he slowly improved. Each night I called home. The neighbors said the boy was fine, asked if Linda should take him. I said no. Linda texted me a few times, but I didn't reply. Something had shifted in me. My father's near-death scare reminded me that life was short, too short to waste on illusions and half-truths. When Dad was stable enough, I flew back, my mind set on finishing what Linda and I had started. I returned home late in the evening, letting myself into the empty house. The boy was asleep at the neighbors. I turned on the living room light and froze. Linda was there, standing among half-packed boxes. She'd come to gather her belongings. Her eyes looked hollow, cheeks tear-stained. "How's your father?" she whispered. "Alive," I said. "Stronger than I am, apparently." She nodded, fiddling with the hem of her shirt. "I'm sorry to barge in like this. I set my suitcase down. Go ahead, pack what you need. I'm not stopping you." She sighed, glancing at the boxes. "I hate this, Jim. You should have hated lying," I replied, voice cold. She wiped her eyes. "I never stopped loving you, you know, even if it doesn't matter anymore." I walked past her, heading to the kitchen for a drink of water. My mouth felt parched, as if I'd swallowed dust. She followed, desperation in her voice. "Jim, before I go, I need you to know I regret everything. I wish I could take it all back." I turned, meeting her gaze. "Regret doesn't change the truth. You chose him, over and over. And now, the boy is caught in the middle." Tears slipped freely down her cheeks. "He deserves better than this." I nodded. "Yes, he does. And I'll do right by him, whether I'm his biological father or not. But you and I, there's no going back." She clutched her hands together, trembling. "I know. I'm leaving for my mom's. I just wanted to see if maybe there was a chance." I shook my head. "There isn't. I'm sorry." She crumpled, sobbing softly. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was drowned by the memory of that red dress on the floor, the forest rendezvous, the receipts, the texts at 3 a.m. I stood there until her sobs quieted, then helped carry her boxes to the trunk of her car. It was a strange replay of the night she'd left before, except this time, we both knew it was final. When she drove off, I stepped back inside. The house was stripped now, bare walls, empty shelves. I realized I could hear an echo in the living room, as if the place itself was mourning the life we once shared. I thought about how I might fill it again, maybe with new memories, or maybe I'd sell the place entirely. I wasn't sure. But I did know I was done living with ghosts. The next day, I picked up the boy, told him his mother was staying with Grandma for a while. He looked uncertain, but accepted it. Over the weeks that followed, I set about creating a routine for just the two of us. I made mistakes, burned dinner, forgot to sign permission slips. But we found a rhythm. I talked with a lawyer about the steps to finalize the separation, the custody. Linda agreed not to fight it, given the circumstances. And Michael, he stayed away. At least he had the decency to honor that much. One night, after tucking the boy into bed, I stood by his door, watching him sleep. My heart ached with the knowledge that biologically, he wasn't mine. But in every other way, he was. I smiled, even through the sting, and closed the door gently. I walked down the hall, the light from the bathroom candles flickering on the walls, reminding me of all the illusions I'd once believed. Maybe not every man can forgive betrayal. Maybe some can. I knew I couldn't, but as I stepped into the bedroom, stripped bare of anything that belonged to her, I felt a faint sense of relief. This would be the space where I rebuilt myself, piece by piece, without her. And it would be slow, yes, and it would hurt, definitely. But I would keep going, one step after another. Not because I was strong. God knows I felt weak, but because I had no other choice. The truth had gutted me, left me raw. Yet, I was still breathing. My father survived his heart attack. I could survive this. I put a hand to my chest, feeling the steady pulse. Then I whispered to the empty room, "I see you," as if addressing both my pain and Linda's memory. The echo of my own voice felt final. I turned off the light, letting darkness settle around me. Tomorrow would come, and I would face it, because not every pain is visible, but it's there, eating at you from the inside. And the only way forward is to keep living, to let the quiet tears pass, to find a spark of reason in the midst of all the lies. Outside, wind rustled the trees, a soft hush that sounded almost like consolation, and as I stood in the dark, I realized there was a certain power in letting go. In deciding that no matter what illusions had shaped my life, I would not be defined by betrayal. One day, I might even love again. But right now, I needed to be alone, to breathe, to reclaim each battered piece of my soul. I could almost taste the bitterness in the air, thick on my tongue, a reminder of what she'd done, and the price I paid. It was a slow, heavy beat of acceptance that settled into my bones, a final punctuation on what we used to have. I climbed into bed, ignoring the emptiness beside me. Emptiness was honest, at least, and with the flick of a switch, the room sank into blackness. No illusions, no more red dresses on the floor, only the promise of a long night's rest and the uncertain dawn that would follow. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I drifted off without dreaming.